Oh God. Gets harder and harder every week, I tell you. Okay, folks. Once again, from a secret, undisclosed location, hidden somewhere deep in the bowels of downtown St. John's, Newfoundland, comes in the Library of Graphic Literature with your host, me, Wallace Ryan. So, not a big week this week, as a matter of fact. I only got one book this week, which was actually was a reorder of the Kaiju Max Volume 1, which I'll talk about in another show, because it's so cool I got to. So of course I figured, well, you know, I have an audience, and I have to keep it up. I have to talk about something. So I decided that this particular episode will be a special one of my favorite artists and one who influenced me a lot when I was growing up, the inimitable Neal Adams. Boom, 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 boom. And this episode, by the way, is dedicated to Arlen Schumer, surely one of the most knowledgeable Neal Adams scholars that I can think of, and just a general comic book scholar. Anyway, I love checking out what he's talking about in his Facebook group. Check it out, Neal Adams Almanac, I think it is. Oh, hang on a second, one of my lights here. God. Sorry about that. This is a one-man show. But yeah, it's worth checking out because, I mean, I've followed him for years in terms of watching what he talks about Neal and all that. And in my mind, he is really one of the more skilled and knowledgeable Adams scholars. But for myself, well, Neal Adams, for you who don't know, he started out, I guess his first big work was, he did something with Archie Comics for a while, but he became famous initially for his work on the Ben Casey comic strip, and then he got into comics and all that, and he was working for DC, and they were using him for covers and stuff like that, but eventually came to their senses and started to use him for a lot of other stuff and all that. And he really caught on. Now a lot of people when they see stuff from Adams, they don't have it I guess quite in perspective, because some people might look at him and say, well, you know, he looks like any other, you know, artist from today, realistic, you know, it kind of looks like Jim Lee or who knows. But at the time he was unique. There wasn't anyone who was as hyper realistic as he was. I mean, I can remember when I first got into comics, it was just like, wow, whoever's doing these covers on DC are something else. And they didn't quite use them right for a while, but then they started to use them. Actually, one of the first ones I think they used them in was this comic here, World's Finest 175, right here. And this comic I actually did have as a kid, and when I grew up, I can remember this was I've seen it in a reprint somewhere. It was kind of cool. It's Batman and Superman together against the anti they call themselves the Superman Batman Revenge Squad. There it is. But yeah, he was, like I say, and at the time, I mean, like I say, a lot of people will look at him now and they just don't get why he was so big. But it was because he was, like I say, very realistic, and there was no one else at that time who was, you know, who had quite the chops. Not only was he, just in terms of an artist and all that, what he did in terms of the art, but his layout and panel design was just bloody amazing. I mean, some people, when they do free-form comic panels and all that, you know, they do nice panels, but then you get lost. The storytelling gets lost, and you know, even some of my favorite artists, I've read them sometimes, and it's just like, okay, do I go to this panel or this panel? I found with Adams there was absolutely no question. So he, I mean, from there he went on to, he started to do a lot more things. He moved into the Brave and the Bold. And here he is with one of his other signature characters, Deadman. He became very associated with Batman and with Deadman, really. Batman because well, I mean, he got on Brave and the Bold, and I guess they seen how good what a job he did with that, and he eventually moved on and took on more roles with other with Detective and the Batman stories and all that. These are all just Brave and the Bold stories, which were all, you know, pretty cool and all that. Great art, like I say, the panel design top notch. Now he also did a few issues with the Spectre around this time too, which are really cool. So if you're a fan, check those out. I find they are actually kind of hard to find, but really super cool. Really super cool design, stuff like that. In terms of panel design, this is here we go. Like I say, hyper realistic, but I mean, he's also fast too, because I mean, he could turn it out. Here's some of the cool cover. As a matter of fact, I think I got a picture of me as a kid reading this particular comic. And this is the Teen Titans that he worked on. Like I say, great comics, great art. And there's another World's Finest to Sergeant Rock. He actually did, I think he originally, I think one of his first comics actually was a Sergeant Rock, if I do believe it. And let's see, cool Sergeant Rock work here. Oh, this one's very cool. And oh yeah, and of course, the one comic I remember from when I was a kid and made me fall in love with the card again was this one, the classic Brave and the Bold '85, in which he redesigned the Green Arrow's outfit. Green Arrow was kind of staid and boring at this point, you know. He was really almost a Batman clone in a lot of ways. But he took him and he changed the outfit, and he gave him the mustache and the beard, and he actually made him quite hip. To me, growing up, Green Arrow, you know, suddenly became like probably the coolest of the DC heroes, and it was because of Adams' great work on it. Great costume. I mean, it really came across. Oh, here's a cool, almost pencil-like panel. Absolutely stunning. Like I say, nothing better. So I mean, he did do more work, and here we go. These are actually the Batman Illustrated by Neal Adams set of books. These are really good too. And like I say, he did some other stuff there, like Batman Detective Comics, some Brave and the Bold, which were really cool. But like I say, just absolutely amazing artwork. Now some of this has been recolored, so it's not quite the way it looked in the real one. I always loved this this cover there. He did a lot of covers around this time in the early 70s, and he did do some mystery stuff and all that. He could do just about anything. And here's another one of my favorite issues, issue number 400, where we get to meet the Man-Bat. And the Man-Bat I thought was pretty cool. It was a cool reversal of the name, but of Batman. But Kirk Langstrom and just Man-Bat himself, I thought was really cool. Like this panel when he finally realizes what's happened to him. But yeah, really cool. Oh, and here we go. This was the second part of it there. And Frank Robbins wrote it along with him. But yeah, there was just something really I really liked about Man-Bat. I just thought it was a very different type of superhero. And let's see. Like I say, just absolutely stunning artwork. There's Man-Bat came back around again. Brave and the Bold and the House of Mystery. But like I say, that was the cool thing about Adams. He could do anything from superhero to mystery to... He even did Jerry Lewis, I do believe he did a episode of, or a couple of issues of that. And he could do just about a cover for just about any comic out there. And when he would do it, it would be cool. Let's have a look through here now. Oh yes, here, and here starts, of course, the Ra's al Ghul's origin, a character that he helped co-create. And this entire run, I had these in the original. I mean, look at this. What I like about this is seeing the mountains and all that. You can see him face in the mountain. Just all those sort of neat little touches that he would add, I think were really cool. But, and here's, of course, Talia. And, of course, he brought back Two-Face. And let's see. Some more detective and more... Oh, here we go. Oh, this one I actually had. I bought this one as a kid and the corner was chopped out of it, but I still loved it. This is another comic which has the set during the... they have sort of a parade of thing. Where is it now? It's a festival, the annual Rutland Halloween Festival, and of course these are some of the writers here themselves brought into it. Anyway, you don't see a lot of Robin. You see him every so often. This was a cool comic anyway. I like this one. Let's go along here, see what else we got. Definitely worth it. Oh, some more Brave and the Bold. Brave and the Bold. Some cool covers here. More covers, more covers. Oh, and here we're back to the Ra's al Ghul storyline. This one actually they adapted into the Batman the Animated Series. And here he is going into the Lazarus pit and coming back awake. I always loved this cover. Look at this cover. I mean, Adams, like I say, back then, I think he was at his height around this time. It's my favorite period of his work. So like I say, if you're not familiar with him, run out and pick yourself up a bit of Adams here and there and see what you think. He brought back the Joker, and the Joker was a little bit more meaner. Oh, and this was basically a reprint of the Ra's al Ghul series. Along with those Batman ones, there was a DC Universe illustrated by Neal Adams, and this basically has everything. Oh, here's possibly his first real story. It was a backup story of the Elongated Man, and this was one of his early works too. Check it out. And like I say, he could really do just about any superhero at all. There's the Teen Titans. He did a cool version of them. More Teen Titans work. There you go. And even more Teen Titans. Oh, this was only a couple of pages in a Justice League. They had it there. Oh yeah, and then that was the short. It was a short Superman story. As a matter of fact, I think this was one of the few Superman stories he did. It was a backup to the world of, or the private life of Clark Kent. I actually had this one too as a kid. I was, like I say, I was an Adams nut, and I would go out and I would try to find everything I could find having to do with Neal Adams. Here we go. So yeah, a little bit of everything there. Some war comics. Oh yeah, and here, this one I like. This was one he did with Joe Kubert, and it's fascinating because Kubert inked it, so it actually looks a lot like Joe's work, but it also looks. There's also the faint shadow of Neal Adams mixed in there. So anyway, Adams was having lots of fun at DC, but as opposed to just sitting there at DC and letting that groove, he was one of the first that I can remember who straddled over from DC to Marvel. Now he kept doing stuff at DC, but he started doing stuff with Marvel, which is pretty cool when you think about it, being able to do both of them at the same time. And I'm sure it sent a bit of a signal to DC too, that, you know, I can do other things or do stuff for other people. But what he did do when he went to Marvel was he did the XMen, which at the time was kind of a bit of a loser title. Oh, let me take off this dust jacket so I don't crush it. It was kind of a loser title for Marvel. And he took over with Roy Thomas, and this is the first issue actually. I mean, look at that. I love that cover. I mean, look at this. Very dramatic. And look, these pages. I mean, check that out. Look at that. Absolutely stunning. Love this stuff. And he changed it completely. Oh, here's another one of my favorites. Sentinels live. Dun 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 dun. And this, I love this. This was actually, I think it was Giant Size X-Men #2 was a reprint of this particular story arc. And I love this. There's Lorna Dane. And I mean, look at this panel design. Still very readable, even though it's highly imaginative and kind of different. And like I say, just I'd never seen at this point, you know, someone who could do comic design like this. That was super cool. And look at this. This was one of my pages, favorite pages actually. And even though it's a free-form design and all that, it still holds together. Absolutely love that. And let's skip over there. Here we. Oh, and this is another one of my all-time favorite covers. And he, of course, designed the. Oh, look, check this out. Look, now isn't that double-page spread? Yet still very, very readable. See this? And he did. I thought he did some of the best Sentinels at the time. And since actually, although Cockrum did a pretty good job at it. And what was really cool was he designed this super cool outfit here for Havoc. And I love that, especially this sequence here. I always love this sequence here where he's starting to power up. Dun, 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 and then kablamo. So anyway, it was a great run on X-Men. Oh, look at this. I love this. The blam. And so all kinds of great characters. It's unlike any. It was very different from Marvel too, because I mean Marvel was so Kirby-centric at the time that, you know, for them to have someone like this come along, it was really it just set it aside from everyone else. Now, unfortunately, even with Neal Adams on board, they couldn't actually. Oh, and here's one of his. With Denny O'Neil, who he did Green Lantern Green Arrow with. This was his last issue that he did with the X-Men, and unfortunately, even with Neal Adams on board, they couldn't save the X-Men back then. So, hey, what can you do? He also had a great run on the Inhumans. He did some of my favorite issues on the Inhumans. And this was where, I can't remember, he's paired with Tom Palmer, who inked him on the X-Men titles. Palmer, I thought, was one of the best inkers of Adams out there. He just really brought him out. Now, some of the other inkers on this series weren't that great, but I mean, still pretty cool. And he also had a run on the Avengers for a while too. Now, this comic unfortunately only has. This volume only has one of the issues from this in it. This was also another great piece of Neal Adams Marvel work. So yeah, and he was actually on the first issue of Killraven. Now he only did the first so many pages before Howard Chaykin took over, but it's still pretty cool. No, and I'm going to start to wrap this up now. And of course, one of the most famous storylines of them all was his work on Green Lantern, Green Arrow. Now I'm going to actually use the the Absolute Edition here because it's just so nice and big. And this, of course, was his masterpiece. This is what he's best known as. It took me years to collect at least most of the comics that I had in this series. I traveled across Canada and everything. I bought some actually in Winnipeg in '78. But this is one of his most famous comics at the time. And this one, I mean, we've seen this page reprinted so many times. It's not funny. It was great. It took on themes from overpopulation, women's rights, native rights, over drug addiction. Of course, oh, and look at this. This is not only Adams, but it's Neal Adams inked by Bernie Wrightson. Very, very cool. And this, oh, here we go. And here's the famous, and this one actually was inked by Adams himself. This is the famous drug issue. Absolutely beautiful issue. And, oh, and look at that. I mean, that's a classic cover. So, great series. I love the series. And it went right up to, this was the final, no, not here. This is it finally ended, oh, there's the first John Stewart. And, yeah, so, well, and this was one actually written by Elliot Magan. And here's the final full issue here. And I had this as a kid. It was so sad that it ended. Now he followed it up. He had 3 small half stories in the back of Flash there, and they were pretty good. And then he had one final one from that was in Green Lantern there. And this one actually is hard to find. You don't see this one around very much. This is the first collection of this that actually had that final Green Lantern solo story by Adams. So it's worth picking this up because it's so complete that way. Oh, and last but not least, well, not second last but not least, Dead Man. This was his other masterpiece and the other thing he was very famous for. Now, some of this has been recolored. Here we go. But it was, like I say, masterful. Wild panel design, and yet still able to hold it together. So for you folks out there who are not familiar with Neal, go out and buy yourself some. Check it out. See what you think, and you'll say to yourself, my God, that Wallace guy was right about this Neal Adams guy. He is super cool. And like I say, as a young artist myself, I mean, I was just blown away by someone who could draw so quickly and so accurately. Oh, and there's his Steranko, famous Steranko panel, which when you look at that way, you can see there's actually some words in amongst that. But yeah, oh, and this is one of my favorite things where he has the story going on and he's talking, but when you step back and look at the whole thing, it's Dead Man in the back of the panel. He uses all the elements to create a super cool little masterpiece of stuff that goes together. And Challengers, I can remember this Challengers in a he only did half that story. Half it was done by George Tuska. So yeah. So another great little piece of masterpiece by Neal Adams. And last but not least, at least from this particular era, like I say, which is still my favorite, very last thing was his classic Superman versus Muhammad Ali. No. I know it sounds, some people laugh when they hear me talking about it, but it was absolutely beautifully drawn. The story, probably not an Academy Award winning story, but it was kind of cool to see Neal take on Superman for an entire issue, and he also drew a really cool Muhammad Ali itself, but the spaceships, everything, really cool. Oh, there we go. There's one of my favorite scenes there. What I liked about this too was that the cover had all these famous people in the background, in the cover, and there's actually a key. There's Jimmy Carter, for instance. There's a key on the back too that names who all these people are. Jackson 5 are in there. Jeanette Kahn is in there. I think the Beatles are even in there. Everyone who was someone back then is in there. But yeah, like when I was growing up, like I say, so many comic artists. I mean, there were great artists out there, Gene Colan, Jack Kirby, and all that. But at the time, he sort of led the new wave of young artists who were coming up, and he changed comics for the better. Well, he changed Batman for the better, because it was him and Denny O'Neil who changed Batman from what was in people's mind the Batman '66 to the newer, darker Batman that we all have come to know and to have fallen in love with. Anyway, folks, that's it for this show. This was my rather quick look at Neal Adams, an artist, like I say, dear to my heart, and one who influenced me a lot, and influenced a lot of other people out there too. And he was also, in terms of, he was a big guy in the industry too. He was the one who got Schuster and Siegel a better deal when the first Superman movie came out, because a lot of people didn't know how DC at the time had screwed over those guys, and he brought it out, and more or less they were basically like, hey, well, see, you know, you got this new movie out, it'd be a shame if something happened to it, type of approach, and shamed DC into basically pony up some dough for them. Not nearly what they should have gotten, but still, at least it was something. So Neal is highly respected in the art field, and I'd actually had the pleasure to meet him 3 different times, I do believe, at different conventions over the years, and he was always I found him to be the nicest kind of guy. So Neal, you're a great artist, and you just set the table for the rest of us. Anyway, next week there's a pile of books next week, so we'll be back to all that new stuff. And of course, once again, keep them comments coming. I love the comments. I love talking to people through the comments section. I think of the comments section almost like my letters page. So feel free to make any comments. Tell me what you liked, tell me what you didn't like, and make some requests. I do take requests. Oh my God, that's the 3rd biggest boom tube I've ever seen. Love you. See you, folks. Bye.